Bhutanam iha samvasa Prapayam iva subrate Daivena ekatra nitanam Unitanam svakarmavi. Translation. My dear mother, in a restaurant or place for drinking cold water, many travelers are brought together, and after drinking water they continue to their respective destinations. Similarly, living entities join together in a family, and later, as a result of their own actions, they are led apart to their destinations.
Om Jnanatimanandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chaksul Milatam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So this morning we are getting the opportunity to be instructed by the big demon Hiranyakasipu. So this is a very unusual situation. But as the saying goes, one should accept gold even from a filthy place. So, generally, demons have no good qualities whatsoever. But here we can see that this particular demon is actually speaking some learned words. Because Hiranyakasipu is not an ordinary demon. He is the fallen Vaikuntha resident, as was described earlier. The two guardians of Vaikuntha, Jai and Vijay, were cursed to take their birth as demons. So they took their birth as Hiranyakasipu and Hiranyaksha. So Hiranyakasipu is quite aware of all the Vedic conclusions, but being cursed to act as a demon, he is not willing to engage in the service of Vishnu. Rather, he wants to kill Vishnu. In any case, he has just performed the death ceremonies for his beloved brother, demon brother Hiranyaksha. And now he is beginning to console his relatives. He says, my dear mother, sister-in-law, and nephews, you should not lament for the death of the great hero. For a hero's death in front of his enemy is glorious and desirable. So a similar instruction was also given by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, that the wise lament neither for the living nor the dead, because actually a wise man knows that this body is simply a temporary covering for the spirit soul, which neither dies nor grows old, nor suffers any of the influences of this material world. So, we can see by this statement of Hiranyakasipu that he's quite well aware of the distinction between the soul and the body. This basic distinction is the beginning of knowledge. Knowledge means to understand matter and spirit and the controller of both. So now, although people pride themselves as being very learned, big scientists, big professors, but they don't even know this simple basic point of knowledge, the distinction between matter and spirit. According to them, this entire creation is simply a material phenomena. There's no question of any spiritual energy. So their ignorant actually. It's described, Yasyatma buddhi kunaveti dhatuki swadi kalada dishu bhaumya idyate. That these people are described that they can't understand that they are something different than this material body. And the byproducts of this body, they take to be their relatives. And therefore, in the Bhagavad, they are described as Saiva Gokara. They're foolish persons, just like an ass or a cow. So, Hiranyakasipu is here giving some nice philosophy. And he says that just as persons come together in a drinking place along the road, and after drinking together, they continue on to their respective destinations. So in the same way, living entities join together in a family, and later, as a result of their own actions, they are led apart to their own destinations. So, we've seen that in India. They have sometimes a drinking place. Some wealthy person will arrange for some shelter where water is distributed freely to any travelers. And the road is very dusty and traveling may be difficult. So many people stop along the path and they sit together and they drink water and they may converse for some time, exchange news about different places. And then after some time, when they're fully refreshed, they go to their respective destinations. So actually, our situation within this material world is very closely paralleled because we are only temporary travelers here within this material world. After all, one day we have to give up these bodies. So while we are in this body, we come together, and thus we make so many relationships in the name of family, friendship, and society. And so we think, this is my husband, this is my wife, this is my father, this is my mother, this is my son, this is my daughter, this is my uncle, this is my aunt. And in this way, we identify very closely with our own bodies and with the body of our loved ones. But actually, this identification is not eternal. It is a temporary identification, as it is described in the next, as it is described later on, that a similar example is given, that just as many straws may come together in the river, and sometimes they will touch each other, and then after a while they will be dispersed. So similarly, we are coming together under the laws of material nature for some time, and so we become combined together, and we believe very deeply in this combination. But actually, it is temporary. Just as the waves of the river force the straws to come together, similarly the waves of material nature, the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, combine different living entities together on account of this bodily and mental attraction. And so we begin to identify more and more closely with this combination. This is called ahankara. Ahankara means false ego. It is not a false ego. It is so tightly bound that we cannot understand even where it began or how to untie it. Therefore, the whole purpose of the Vedic instruction is to gradually help us how to cut this knot of false ego. And what is that method? With the knowledge or the weapon of knowledge. The weapon of knowledge, the sword of knowledge and detachment. This is the method. That with the sword of knowledge, what does knowledge mean? That I'm not this body. So with this basic knowledge, I can begin to understand how it is that I have come to misidentify myself, not only with this body, but with the bodies of my relatives, my friends, with the house that I'm living in, with the land that I was born in, and etc., etc., etc. I'm so identified with so many extensions of this bodily misconception. So, one has to gain this knowledge. This is called jnana. Jnana, vijnana. And vijnana means to practically realize this knowledge, to make it practical. Just like I may have this knowledge intellectually, but when I begin to act on the platform of this knowledge, then it is called dharma or religion. Religion means to act according to scriptural injunctions. So the whole Vedic culture is scientifically set up so that gradually, by acting according to religious instruction, one can become detached from this material conception of life and all of its different factors. A civilized society is a society which gradually leads the citizens to the perfection of life, namely to go back to Godhead. If one goes through this human form of life and doesn't come to the point of Krishna consciousness or God consciousness, if one doesn't come to the point of knowing himself to be the eternal servant of the Lord, then he has not fulfilled his mission of human life. Human life is not simply meant as an opportunity for sense gratification. Although there is ample opportunity with this human body for sense gratification, that is not really the best use of this body. Just like a man may have $1 million, so he can misspend this $1 million or he can spend it wisely. If he goes out and frivolously spends this money, then he loses this asset and he becomes a poor man. However, if he is very intelligent, he knows how to invest his money so that it gains interest in such a way that actually he becomes more and more wealthy. So this human body is like that. It is a great wealth. But if you don't understand how to use this wealth, then you can frivolously spend it up until the point where at the end of your life, you have no more accumulated assets of this human body. And so in your next birth, you'll take your body in some abominable species of life. So, this is the utter failure of human life. If one, after having this human body, misuses it in such a way that he degrades himself into the animal species. Therefore, the Vedic culture recommends sacred initiation. Initiation means that you get the opportunity to not have to take your birth in a lower species of life. So, if one doesn't become initiated, then where is the difference between himself and an animal? An animal doesn't sit for initiation because an animal doesn't have any cognition of himself as something different than this body. So one has to take spiritual initiation and perfect this human form of life so that at the end of his life he understands that he's not his body, that he's pure spirit soul, and he can direct himself towards the goal of going back to home, back to Godhead. The whole Vedic culture is therefore designed in such a way that one gradually can become detached from the body and its possessions. This does not mean, however, that we become irresponsible or that we artificially give up the things of this material world, but rather we learn to use these things in the service of their genuine proprietor, Krishna. Therefore, this is not a negative or escapist philosophy where one simply claims that everything within this material world is false and temporary and therefore I shall have nothing to do with it. That is not the sign of real renunciation. That is not the sign of real detachment. Rupa Goswami describes that real renunciation is to accept everything in the service of the Lord and to use it as such. But not false renunciation is to see everything as Maya and therefore to reject it. Real renunciation means that I see everything within this material world as Krishna's, not as my own, and therefore I use it in the service of Krishna. This is a platform of knowledge. So we have to act on that according to that understanding. Not that we should gradually sink into the misconception that I am my body, I am the son or daughter of such and such persons, this is my home, this material world is my home, and in this way we spin a web of illusion which catches us. Just like a worm or caterpillar spins a cocoon. There's some worms, they spin a cocoon in such a way that at the end, when they seal it off, then they die. So people are like that also. They're spinning a web of illusion around them to the point where it strangles them and kills them. They have no more intelligence. And so they die in gross ignorance. So we have to avoid that type of activity. How does one do this? One has to act on the instructions of superior authorities, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. One has to behave according to religious principles. In each position in life, whether one is a brahmachari, a grihastha, a vanaprastha, or a sannyasi, there are so many rules and regulations which should be obeyed in order to gradually elevate one to the highest platform of Krishna consciousness. So one has to learn carefully what is stated in the scriptures. One has to study the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, so that one will understand how to perform his duty without attachment. In the Bhagavad Gita it is said that such a person who can do this is actually sannyasi. Sannyasi is not simply a question of changing the color of one's clothing. A sannyasi means one who acts and fulfills his duty without being attached to that duty. That type of person is a genuine sannyasi. So in order to become that detached, you have to develop a higher taste. That higher taste is love for Krishna. The love for Krishna can be developed by anyone, but you have to work on it. You can't expect that you'll meditate on sense gratification and develop a desire to love Krishna. That's not possible. If we have desire for sense gratification, then we have to approach the spiritual master, and under his expert guidance, we have to see how gradually these desires can be reduced to the point of non-existence. The spiritual master will give us the good guidance, how we can situate ourselves within devotional service in such a way that we won't become frustrated in our material desires, but gradually these desires will be dovetailed in Krishna's service, and so they will be purified. This is the purpose of the spiritual master. The scriptures are there to give guidance, and the spiritual master is there to give you the practical application of Shastra. Therefore, it's absolutely required that one have a spiritual master, that one work under the instructions of the spiritual master. Simply to read the books, it won't be sufficient, because you won't know how to apply the instructions of the books. Therefore, you require Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, all three. Sadhu means those who are saintly, the saintly persons. They set the example, which you can watch and see and observe, and so establish your life following in their footsteps. Rupa Goswami describes in the Nectar of Instruction that gradually one has to follow in the footsteps of the great devotees of the Lord. Mahajana yena gata sabhanta. One has to follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans, the great souls. As they do, we have to do. As they have led their life, we have to pattern our life. Then automatically the path becomes straight and quick back to Godhead. On the other hand, if you listen to your own mental speculation and concoctions, that path will become so devious or deviant that you'll go all over the material world. And that is what has happened. We have been accepting our mind's dictation for millions upon millions of births. And so we're wandering from one planet to another, from one country to another, from one home to another, from one family to another, from one body to another. And there's no end in sight until we catch sight of the lotus feet of the pure devotee of the Lord. And catching that sight of those lotus feet, you don't let those lotus feet out of your vision. You don't let those lotus feet out of your vision. And how do you see such lotus feet? By hearing. The hearing is most important, therefore. By hearing, you can become fixed in Krishna consciousness. The hearing is the best sense of all. People are so much proud of their eyes. They want to see God. But why don't they believe that you can hear God? Just like at night time. In the morning, when the alarm clock rings, it wakes you up. It doesn't require any other sense. Simply to hear an alarm will wake you up. All the other senses may be sleeping, but the sense of hearing is so important and is so strong that it can wake you up. So similarly, when we get woken up by the Hare Krishna mantra, then you'll be able to see God. First of all, learn to hear God. Learn to hear God's name. Learn to hear the instructions of the spiritual master. Then you'll feel yourself woken up. You won't be sleeping anymore, sleeping in the lap of Maya. So, Hiranyakasipu is describing then that, my dear mother, my dear aunt, don't be disturbed that your son or your nephew has now died. Because after all, what are these bodily relationships? They're very temporary. Because the soul is eternal, he has not died. That sometimes one soul comes together with another soul, and then it goes apart. Therefore, we're feeling pain in this material world. Because we're thinking, you're not your soul, you're your body, and I'm my body, and I want to be with your body forever. And that is not possible. That's ignorance. Because this body is made of material energy. It's going to disintegrate. But the soul is eternal. Therefore, if you want to learn how to remain together eternally, you have to be on the platform of pure spirit soul. One time, one devotee wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada. She said, I had a dream that everybody was on a big cloud chanting Hare Krishna together. Prabhupada said, yes, that is a fact. In the kingdom of God, we will all be reunited chanting Hare Krishna together. But that is actually, this is eternal family, eternal friendship. If you want to develop permanent, eternal relationships, then you have to establish them on a spiritual platform. Just like we can practically experience now, for those who were initiated by Srila Prabhupada, that he's not gone. That we don't feel that separation. Otherwise, for an ordinary affair of this material world, when the person dies, that's it. There's intense pain, suffering, and separation, and that is it. You can't ever connect again with that person. And yet, in spiritual relationship, you can never be disconnected. The relationship with the spiritual master is eternal. And therefore, if the father is eternally your father, then the brothers and sisters are also eternal. The nephews and nieces, they're also eternal. This is spiritual relationship. So one has to be intelligent enough to understand that I'm trying to hold on to these gross bodily designations, father, mother, brother, sister, and all other types of bodily relationship, but this is not who you are. And you can't hold on to these, and these will be the sources of your misery. Therefore, we have to come on the platform of understanding ourselves. And Hiranyakasipu was preaching, don't be illusioned, my dear mother, about the apparent death of your son. He has not died. He's eternal and he's gone on to his next destination. And we have to accept that this is the laws of material nature. That they bring people together for some time and they separate them again for another time. But Krishna will never be separated from you. Here is a relationship which can never be separated. Therefore, what is the whole goal of the Vedas? To direct you to Krishna. To direct you to surrendering to Krishna. Because then, when you become fully immersed in Krishna consciousness, you feel completely free of anxiety. Here is someone that can never be taken away from you. Here is someone that can never be separated from you. We're all looking for that relationship, that friend, that lover that we'll never lose. That is Krishna. And when you become eternally related with Krishna again, then you feel free from all anxiety, from all distress, from all unhappiness. So, Hiranyakasipu goes on to say, the spirit soul, the living entity, has no death, for he is eternal and inexhaustible. Being free from material contamination, he can go anywhere in the material or spiritual worlds. He is fully aware and completely different from the material body. But because of being misled by misuse of his slight independence, he is obliged to accept subtle and gross bodies created by the material energy, and thus be subjected to so-called material happiness and distress. Therefore, no one should lament for the passing of the spirit soul from the body. Because of the movements of the water, the trees on the bank of the river, when reflected on the water, seem to move. Similarly, when the eyes move because of some mental derangement, the land appears to move also. Everybody has got this experience, that sometimes you have a severe headache, for example, or nausea, and so everything appears to be moving. Actually, the land is not moving. It's like a person is drunk. He sees everything swaying. Or this little boy who's always dancing. By turning around all the time, he's always seeing the land. He's very attracted by the way the floor is moving all the time. Children play like that. They spin around so that everything begins to become wobbly. And they take pleasure in this. So, everybody's got experience of how this happens. Now, what is the fact? Is it that the floor is moving? No, it is a mental derangement. This is the point mentioned. It is mental derangement. Mental derangement. So similarly, the example is given that this body appears to be moving. That is to say, I appear to be moving. My position appears to be changing, but actually I'm fixed up. I am not changing. I am not changing whatsoever. Just like the example is given in another place in the Vedas, that the moon is fixed up in the sky. But as it is reflected on different things, it looks differently. Just like the moon reflected in water, you see, is rippling. The moon reflected on ice is stationary. And the moon reflected on oil is murky. It's not clear. So what is the fact? Is the moon steady? Is the moon flickering? Is the moon murky? No. It just depends upon what you're looking through. So similarly, according to the modes of material nature, they're just like a prism which diffuses light in different ways. The sunshine is coming down in 1 degree, but it's going through this prism of colors, and it becomes made into a whole band of colors. From practically dark black to white light. You see? So similarly, everything is the energy of God. But within this material world, that energy becomes diffused into 3 different modes. Goodness, passion, ignorance. And these 3 modes combine together to form 8,400,000 different types of bodies. Different types of species. And within each species, there's no 2 bodies that are ever the same. And because the living entity has got this false knot of material attachment that he identifies with this body, then he sees everything according to the type of body which he has, given to him by the modes of material nature. And so he sees himself moving. He sees himself growing old. He sees himself married to such and such person, the father or mother of such and such person, the son or daughter of such and such person, in this type of body, living in this place, in this type of occupation. And this is all called Maya. It's Maya, because it has nothing to do with the soul. Just like the moon is sitting up there in the sky, it's not murky, it's not flickering. It's none of those things. Here the example is given here. That the trees on the bank of the river, when reflected on the water, seem to move. That they're not moving. The trees are steady. But they seem to move on account of the rippling of the water. Similarly, when someone has got, his eyes are moving because of mental derangement, just like we said, spinning around, and the floor appears to be moving, this is mental concoction. It is due to your mind's attachment. The mind's desire for speculating in sense gratification. So how to get over this? How to get over this? This is the question you should be asking. How can I come away from the influence of Maya? And then how to do that? How to steady the mind? You have to change your vision. You have to change your consciousness. You have to change the conception. Well, what kind of conception do you want? Krishna's vision. Krishna's conception. This is knowledge. Not the conception fed to you by your senses. Because your senses are going to feed all kinds of impressions. And they're going to be digested into your mind, and they're going to be expanded and exploded into one sense gratification, desire after another, without end. So how to stop that? You have to begin to see in a different perspective. That means Krishna vision. Shastra Chaksu. You have to see through these scriptures. When something happens, you have to understand it in perspective of scripture. Otherwise, you're going to be caught in gross ignorance. So, a saintly person, sadhu, is one who cuts this knot. You cannot say that I don't like these words. They're too disturbing. to my desire for sense gratification. That is the business of a sadhu. Therefore it's said, that's why people are afraid. Sometimes you'll see a wife is afraid for her husband to go into the temple. Why? Because she knows that when he goes into this temple, he's going to hear that you're not your body. That this relationship with family is ultimately temporary. Therefore sometimes you'll see, they'll say, don't go to the temple. Don't chant Hare Krishna. Sometimes family members tell their other family members this. Because they know that by chanting Hare Krishna, gradually one will become so much attached to Krishna. Actually, it doesn't mean that he'll become less attached to his mother or father or brothers or sisters or relatives. No, he'll become genuinely attached to them on the platform of spiritual life. But they don't want that. They want the attachment on the platform of sense gratification. But one who is actually Krishna conscious, he can't stand to relate on the platform of sense gratification because it causes suffering to himself and others. What fun is there to be born as a hog? A hog thinks he's enjoying. He's living in his hog pen, living in the stool and mud, and he thinks he's very happy. But we as human beings can see, oh, what a pitiable condition. And yet he's enjoying like anything in that pig pen. So similarly, people are enjoying like anything within this material world. But for a liberated soul, this material world and its enjoyment is no better than the enjoyment that we see a hog enjoying. The enjoyment in the form and shape of sex life and other sense gratification is actually detestable for a liberated soul. Jamunacharya says, now that I have got the superior taste of Krishna consciousness, the very thought of sex life causes me to become repelled, and I spit on the thought. Just like in the Vaikuntha planets, they're husband and wife there, but they don't have this sex life of this material world. Because they got a higher taste, a higher experience, a higher pleasure. What is that pleasure? They got love for Krishna. They're interacting with the Supreme, beautiful, all attractive, all powerful, all intelligent, all famous, all renounced, all wealthy personality of Godhead Krishna, compared to whom everybody else is simply very insignificant. So we think that there's so much significance within this material world, with all the relationships we have. That's simply due to our lack of Krishna consciousness. One who is Krishna conscious, fully Krishna conscious, these material activities and these material events don't seem so important. That we have described in a recent issue of our Harmonist newspaper, that one should not become so disturbed at the changing events of the decade. People become so alarmed. But it is actually a very temporary situation, our stay in this material world. So, Hiranyakasipu goes on to say that, in the same way, O my gentle mother, when the mind is agitated by the movements of the modes of material nature, the living entity, although freed from all the different phases of the subtle and gross body, thinks that he is changed from one condition to another. We believe in this ignorance. I'm getting old, a man thinks, or a woman thinks. And they spend, just like the first lady of the country, spent $30,000 to get some wrinkles off the face. That means ignorance. That's supposed to be the leader of the country's wife. They're supposed to be able to lead the whole country and all of the people back to Godhead. And they're spending $30,000 of the taxpayers' money to take some wrinkles off the face. You think that you can stop death by some cosmetic operation? Gross ignorance. Instead of wasting that money, they could have used it to spread Krishna conscious literature all over the world. That'll actually give you a body that'll never get wrinkles. So, we have to come out of this ignorant condition by taking to Krishna consciousness. Don't allow yourself to become deviated from Krishna consciousness. You should realize that this is a golden opportunity, this human form of life. It is a golden opportunity to meet the spiritual master. You should make your plan how to get initiated, how to perfect that initiation. And in this very lifetime, you should become completely free from all types of illusion and ignorance. Become fully Krishna conscious. So that within this lifetime itself, within this very lifetime, you can enter into the spiritual world. This spiritual world is not limited that you have to wait until after this lifetime. It is a question of consciousness. Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan, is an unlimited abode. And all pure devotees reside eternally there. It is not a question that simply you have to wait until you give up this body. No. You can begin to reside there now by transcendental consciousness. So everybody should very much perfect their consciousness and not take another birth within this material world. Hiranyakasipu concludes, he says, in his bewildered state, the living entity accepting the body and mind to be the self considers some people to be his kinsmen and others to be outsiders. Because of his misconception, he suffers. Indeed, the accumulation of such concocted material ideas is the cause of suffering and so-called happiness in the material world. The conditioned soul thus situated must take birth in different species and work in various types of consciousness, thus creating new bodies. This continued material life is called samsara. Birth, death, lamentation, foolishness, and anxiety are due to such material considerations. Thus we sometimes come to proper understanding and sometimes fall again to a wrong conception of life. So, do not fall again into a wrong conception of life. Make this determination that in this very lifetime I shall perfect my Krishna consciousness and go back to home, back to Godhead. Never take another birth again in this material world. Are there any questions? All right. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.